Most men don't spend their lives trying to become their fathers. They spend their lives trying not to. Maybe your father was absent, maybe he was angry, maybe he worked too much, maybe he never said he was proud of you, or maybe he wasn't a terrible father at all. Just ordinary. But whether you realize it or not, he became your first blueprint. And for many men, adulthood quietly becomes an attempt to redraw it. I'll never treat my family like he did. I'll never lose my temper. I'll never make the mistakes he made. At first, that sounds healthy, until you realize something. If your entire life is built as a correction, you're still building around him, you're not free, you're just the opposite of a ghost. A ghost haunts a house by staying there. You can haunt your own life by spending it trying to stay somewhere else. By the end of this video, I'm going to give you one question that can collapse the competition you've been having with your past. But first, we have to understand the compass. Imagine a compass. No matter which direction you walk, it's still deciding where you go. That's what happens when your identity is built in reaction to someone else. If your father lied, you become obsessively honest. If he was lazy, you become a workaholic. If he never showed emotion, you promise yourself you'll always be emotionally available. None of those qualities are bad. The question is, who chose them? Did you? Or did his behavior quietly make those decisions, years before you were old enough to notice? Here's the trap: running away from a pattern is still being tethered to it. You're just pulling the rope from the opposite direction. Real freedom isn't becoming his opposite. It's reaching the point where he no longer determines your direction at all. There's another cost to living as a correction. You begin performing. Not for other people, for yourself. Every disagreement becomes a test. Every mistake becomes evidence. Every moment of frustration raises the same terrifying question: what if I'm becoming him? So you watch yourself constantly. You monitor your words, your reactions, your tone, your patience. You're standing guard at the gates of your own personality, making sure nothing that reminds you of him escapes, and that's why you're exhausted. It's not just the work. It's not just the responsibility. It's the surveillance, watching yourself every day to make sure you never become someone else. The strange part is, the harder you fight certain traits, the more attention you give them. Not because you're becoming your father, because you're spending every day trying to prove that you won't. Think about what that actually means. You're no longer making decisions because they reflect your values. You're making decisions because they don't reflect his. Those sound similar. They're not. One is freedom, the other is reaction. If every choice you make begins with, "I'll never be like him," then he's still writing the first sentence of your story. He's still influencing your character, not through his presence, but through your resistance. That's what makes invisible inheritances so powerful. You can spend your entire life believing you've escaped them, while quietly orbiting them every single day. One of the most freeing moments in a man's life comes much later than most people expect. It's the moment he stops seeing his father as either a hero or a villain, and starts seeing him as something much more ordinary: a man carrying an invisible inheritance of his own. He wasn't operating from nowhere. He was operating from a baseline you probably never saw. Maybe he spent his life trying to outrun his own father's mistakes. Maybe he was reacting to wounds nobody ever helped him understand. Maybe nobody ever taught him what he was expected to teach you. None of that excuses the damage, but it changes the story. Because once you understand his baseline, your performance stops feeling like a necessity and starts becoming a choice. So here's the question that changes everything. If your father's mistakes disappeared tomorrow, who would you choose to become? Not who would make him proud, not who would prove him wrong, not who would erase the past. Who would you be if you weren't reacting to anyone? Sit with that for a moment, because most people have never actually asked themselves. They've spent so much energy becoming not him, they've never stopped to discover who they actually are. That's where real maturity begins, not when you defeat your past, when you stop needing it to tell you who to become. Real freedom doesn't come from escaping your past, it comes from no longer needing your past to define your future. You stop living as a correction, you start living as a choice. Your character stops being built out of resistance and starts being built out of intention. That's how cycles actually break. Not because someone finally becomes better, but because someone finally becomes authentic. The inheritance loses its power the moment it stops determining your direction. That's when the compass finally belongs to you. Your father's mistakes were his responsibility. They were never your debt to repay. You don't have to spend your life balancing a scale you didn't tip. Pause. You don't owe the world a better version of your father. You owe the world the first real version of yourself. Tell me in the comments, what was one trait of your father's you spent years trying to fix in yourself? only to realize it was never yours to carry. And if you've been living as a correction for so long that you've forgotten who you actually are, watch, you don't feel like yourself anymore. It's about what happens when the performance finally breaks, and the real person underneath finally gets the chance to decide who they actually want to become. I'll see you there.